Welcome to Behind the Grind Show, an entrepreneur think tank where we sit down with entrepreneurs and high-performing individuals to talk about their journey. My name is Jimmy O'Donovan, and I'm sitting here with my co-host, Tucker Massey.
Hey everyone, Behind the Grind Show is sponsored by Long Hollow Creatives, a boutique co-work and co-op studio space located at 700 North Guillemard St. Today on the podcast we have Andrew Rothfeder. He is the president of Suitor Properties, which developments and projects include, let me catch my breath for this, Maritime Place, The Artisan, SOGO Shops, De Villers Square, Five Sisters, Main Street Stores, Southtowne Apartments and Office Building, SCI Building, and Savoy Place. Andrew has been in the commercial real estate business since 1988, and before joining Suitor Properties in 2011, he spent 6 years with Island Resorts Development on Pensacola Beach, and one of their developments was Portofino. Andrew, how are you doing today?
I'm doing great. Thank you guys for having me.
Yeah, thank you for joining.
Thanks for joining us.
So how are you guys today?
Great, it's Friday.
Yeah. Doing well.
Doing awesome. Been up since 4:30.
Oh, you got me beat.
Yeah.
15 minutes.
So how about you give the listener a little background on yourself? Where are you from? How do you get to where you're at now?
Sure. Thanks for asking. So I've been here in the Pensacola area for about 15 years. Before that, I was in Atlanta for 20 years, and I grew up in Montgomery, Alabama. So left there after high school, went to college in Atlanta, and stayed there until about 15 years ago, and then moved here.
Nice. So how did you get associated with Suitor Properties?
Well, it's actually a neat story. All I've ever done is real estate development, and about 8 or 9 years ago, Quint and I had become friends, and we were having coffee one day, and I'd been familiar with the work he was doing, which was really cool stuff because it wasn't tactically based, it was strategic based, and it was all around making Pensacola the greatest city in the world, which is what a vision, right? Anytime you say, I'm gonna make my city the best city in the world. And his mission was around improving quality of life. Like, that's what we're gonna do. And whatever tactics, you needed in order to accomplish that were what he was gonna do. So the actual businesses that he got into really didn't matter. It was all research driven. If you know the way Quint operates,
right.
He's gonna do his homework. And the first part of that started with just saying, we don't need to recreate the wheel. We need to go around to other southern cities whose communities have been reinvigorated, whose downtowns have been redeveloped, who've come back to life, and learn from them. Let's go, who's done it right? Because this is 8, 9 years ago, Pensacola downtown wasn't what it is right now.
Starting from scratch.
Yeah, so he would learn lessons and learn, tactics and things to do. Example, buying the AA affiliate of the Twins now, the Blue Wahoos. That wasn't to get in the baseball business. That was because other communities they learned about had brought a team like that to town, and it became something for a whole town to rally around. Right? Sense of community spirit.
Yeah.
If you've been to a Wahoos game, you know that it's about the experience. Most people leave those games and don't even know who won or lost. It's just an incredible experience.
Right.
Yeah.
So real estate, just became another tactic. So that's, Clint and I were talking 8 years ago, and that was one of the lessons learned from these towns was you can do all kind of cool stuff. You can do lots of philanthropy. You can bring a baseball team. You can do, things in the vein of entrepreneurship and civic engagement. All these things are critical. At some point, though, if your downtown is, not alive and vibrant, you have to touch real estate, right? Because you've been to these towns and you've seen them, and they're empty. They're ghost towns.
Right.
And they might have great building stock, old buildings, but they're all boarded up. So if you want to bring a downtown to life, that's just a tactic you're going to have to touch at some point. So that's Quint and I chatted about that and said, let's do it here. Let's start working together and figure out how we can, one project at a time, baby steps, start to do our part to, to show other investors and developers that, hey, downtown is a good place to invest.
Absolutely. With your background in real estate development, as soon as you and Quinn finished that conversation, what were some of the first struggles that you envisioned with Pensacola?
Well, I think we were the first to say it wasn't like nothing was happening downtown.
Right.
That's a blessing. A lot of people have made investments that were. The way I describe it is, if you go to these towns, you quickly learn some lessons, and I've learned so much in the last few years about what it takes to revitalize a downtown. And what you learn, and you've probably heard this before, there's 3 legs to the stool. You've heard of them: live, work, and play, right?
Yeah.
And it's like a stool in the sense that all 3 legs have to be coming up. If 2 of them are coming up and 1 isn't coming up, the other 2 can't grow.
Right.
And you go to these towns and you learn that a lot of the way these things happen in different orders. But you take Pensacola 8 or 9 years ago, there was actually a decent amount of work, right? There were still people working downtown. We had a decent amount of office space. And we had actually a decent amount of play, right? If you know, Palafox wasn't completely dead. I mean, a lot of people before us, the Deborah Dunlaps of the world, you know, there were a few bars, a few restaurants. The city had done a nice job of programming with things like gallery night. So there was something happening. But the thing that was clearly missing was live. You know, not only was there not much residential real estate to live in, you wouldn't want to live downtown.
Yeah.
So that was part of the conversation. Okay, now we know what we need, but we knew before we got people to live downtown, we needed to make downtown better in some other ways. And the first thing you do is you pick a spot, you pick a corner, you pick one place where you say, I'm going to start here. I'm going to make this one corner awesome. And for us, looking around, we decided that was Main and Palafox. That was the main intersection that needed some love.
Why not Main Garden?
Well, again, that was a node that already had some life to it.
Okay.
You know, the Brenton Blunt buildings, while they aren't what they are today, since Bobby Switzer's come in and done his unbelievable job with that building. But you had vinyl, was already kind of going across the street. But we just thought this intersection, we thought, you know, with Main Street being what it was to connect the 3 Mile Bridge, right, you know,
closer to the
water,
Yeah.
that all 4 corners were dead. And we said, this is where we want to focus. So we started with one project, which was that corner. The interesting thing about it is, and we learned this from another town, from Asheville, North Carolina, was it's not enough to just go in and take a beautiful old historic building that's boarded up and renovate it. Like gut it, start over, and make it beautiful. Because we've seen this before, and we learned this, and it's a mistake that some other towns made, is they thought if I just make the building beautiful and hang a for rent sign in the window, problem solved.
Okay.
It doesn't work, because who wants to be the first mover, right? Who's going to open a store of any kind in a market where there's no foot traffic, there's no people? So what we learned from Asheville is there was a generational family there that made a decision, if we're going to do it, we're going to go all the way, which means not only do we have to renovate the building, we've got to open the businesses ourselves. So that's the magic of having, you know, people like the Studers here in this town, is they were willing to go in and make some serious investment, knowing that they weren't going to see any kind of financial return anytime soon, if ever.
I.e. bodacious.
You got it.
Yep.
So that was the decision. We said, we're going to renovate the building, we're going to open, doing things we've never done before. None of us had a clue. We're going to open a coffee shop, we're going to open a kitchen store, we're going to open an events place, and an olive oil and vinegar store.
Yeah.
Again, lessons learned from other towns. We repeated a model we had learned from another city. You know, lots of lessons learned, right? I mean, the Studers lost a decent amount of money those first few years just trying to figure out how to operate these stores. But that was the beginning. And it sort of signaled a message that, okay, now there's a there's something to do. And it said to others, you know, come on in, the water's fine. Like, you can actually create something here. So, you know, that's where it started.
Okay.
So what's one of the number one things that you learned from the cities when having to revitalize a downtown? What's one of the number one things you learned from that? You said you learned a few.
Yeah, well, I think it's similar to what we were just talking about, is if you go to these towns and you start asking questions, it doesn't take long for you to find the person or the people or the family that was responsible for being the fire starter to get their downtown revitalized. And so again, we've got this series that we've been doing for a couple of years now called Civicon.
Yeah.
And Quint and Rich are gracious enough to bring speakers in from all over the world, world-class speakers in urban revitalization, parking and building stock, and you know, just run
bike
the
lanes.
gamut, yes, of how to do it and how to do it right. A lot of these lessons, of course, what they're doing is they're taking us back to the way that people lived for 10,000 years before the invention of the car. So this seems obvious, but you know, when I heard the speech about a year and a half ago, it just light bulbs were going off, because I haven't thought about it in this sort of perspective. But for thousands of years, up until 100 years ago when the car was invented, we all lived in a certain way. Think about it. You did not have the ability to go very far from where you were. So think about the way ants live. Think about just sort of anthropologically, sociologically. We lived in clusters. We lived in hives. We lived in hubs.
Right.
And at the very center of that was whatever you call it, an atrium, the town square, right, where commerce took place and trade. And then, you know, the shopkeepers are right there, you know, in the middle doing their retail trade. Go just half a block away, and that's the people who were working but didn't need to be right in the hustle and bustle. They needed a place to shoe the horses, right, or whatever.
Yeah.
And then go another half block away, and that's where you lived. So, you know, this is how we emerged as a society. In every town, you go to Europe, this is how towns were all built. Then we went and did this crazy thing called inventing the car, and it changed everything. So now we created suburban life, and that's what we've had for 100 years. Again, I'm not knocking it. This is technology and it's progress, and you know, that's the way we've lived for the last, whatever, 50, 60 years. Now, you know, with a car, you can live 20 miles outside of town. You can have an acre of land. You can have your own house. And then, of course, we saw what happened there. The malls got built, and all of a sudden, that's life in America for a lot of people. Well, you know what happened, which is that killed all of our downtowns. Save a couple, right? New York City never died, right? But most of the smaller towns and mid-sized towns went dark in the downtown, and we thought we've arrived. What we've seen happen in the last 10 or 20 years is we've realized, you know, it's like water finds its balance point, and we found that as a society, we yearn to go back to live that way. Again, I'm making a generalization, not everybody.
Right.
And you can see it mostly in the, sort of think of the demographics as a barbell. And think about the two ends of the barbell being the big push of people who want to return to this kind of lifestyle. So, and when I say bar, I'm talking about an age range.
Right.
Yeah.
So at the one end, you think about retirees and empty nesters. That's me. I'm 51 years old. My kids are in college. When my kids were growing up, I lived in suburbia. I lived in a house, and I lived out a yard and all that stuff. Don't need that anymore, and don't want that. I don't want to spend, you know, a ton of my life in a car. I want to live somewhere more, you know, in community with other people. And then you look at the other end of the spectrum, which is the younger generation. Again, people that don't have kids yet.
Right.
You know, young marrieds, singles. This is the kind of lifestyle. Again, this is research based. You know, you can do the surveys and do the data. They don't want to live out in a house in suburbia and spend 2 hours a day in their car.
Riding my electric skateboard to work.
Yeah. So it's that whole lifestyle, walkable, bikeable. I want to be able to come downstairs and do my shopping and get my food and commune with other people and live that life. And we're just seeing it every year. The percentages are going up and up and up of people wanting to return to that life. So, so the thing that we learned, back to your question, sorry, I was a long aside.
Nope, it's perfect.
Is that as the desire for these things came up, no one was willing to be the first mover to do something to revitalize their downtown because the first person was going to lose money.
Right.
And I get it. I mean, people who are in a business, they're in it, they got to feed their families and they got to put food on the table. So you're going to go look somewhere else that has less risk than being the first person to go do something. So you went to these towns. To your question, the biggest thing we learned, it doesn't take you long to find the person, the Quince doer in that town who said, I'm not going to let it happen. You know, they have generational, generations of their family have lived in that town.
Right.
And they hear the stories from their grandparents and their great-grandparents of what life used to be like, and they're just done.
Yeah.
And so the key is they were willing to do something and they didn't have to have profit as a motive because they were doing it as a passion project. I'm not going to let my city die. And really what you're saying ultimately is the research is showing the most important reason to do this. The market wants it, right? The retirees, empty nesters, and the younger generation wants this life. But, well, they want it, but someone has to be the first one to come in and do something about it, make it happen, to do the project, to invest in whatever it is, and not have to have profit as a motive.
Right. And we see now Southtowne apartments.
Right in the middle of downtown.
Yeah.
Next project is Savoy Place. So we are how far out from completion on that?
Yeah, we're getting close. We're supposed to be delivering all the apartments in October.
Okay.
So what's that, 7?
And this is right on DeVille, or is across the street from Five Sisters?
It is.
Okay.
It is. It's such a cool neighborhood. I'm sure you guys are familiar
is,
with
Yeah,
it.
absolutely.
It has just become, like, I don't know how to draw an analogy, like the little 5 points of Atlanta is what Belmont de Villiers has just become. It's got so much authentic history. And that's the interesting thing about Pensacola. When you step back from it, the way I describe it is history and geography have done the heavy lifting for Pensacola. It's handed us a 450-year-old city, just rich in history and tradition and building stock and arts and culture, and it's all real. It's not contrived, it's not made up, it's not fake facades. And then of course geography. And we've got a city on the water, right? So we got these things going for us already, which is wonderful. And it's sort of like, so we've been handed the ball on the 1 yard line. And we all know that last yard's hard to get.
Yeah.
But it's perspective to think about, how many other towns in the country would give a lot to have those assets that we have. So part of that history is this Belmont de Villiers neighborhood. I mean, it's so rich in culture and history. If you study it and you learn about what that neighborhood was like back in the 40s and 50s, it was part of the Chitlin Circuit. I mean, you name the entertainer that was big in that time. Tina Turner, Louis Armstrong, all those they all came through there and played at those clubs there. And so we just love being a part of watching that neighborhood come back to life.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
To reference back to your dumbbell comparison, so barbell.
As soon as you said that, I was like, man,
Same shape.
speaking my language.
Same shape. Letter I turned on its side.
Right,
Yeah.
there we go. We have one end of the retired, empty nest, who have been downtown in some of the homes, for a while now. Now we see this influx of young professionals, the singles that you were talking about. What are the goals, and how are we accomplishing getting those people living downtown? We do have, again, Southtowne. What are the other goals and objectives coming up for those?
Well, I mean, it's interesting the way you brought that up. So again, we're going back to this sort of mission statement that we have of improving quality of life. Right. It doesn't matter what spits out of that equation of what's the next right thing to do, we're going to take a stab at it. And what we realized from that research is absolutely key. Like every town has its problems, has its issues, has its challenges, and Pensacola is no different, right? And the idea is, how do you move everyone along, not just a few? And you start to look at all of the issues and you say, can we start to parse these out into cause and effect? Which can we really do something about, which isn't just putting a Band-Aid on something that's going to keep happening, but how do we get down to root causes and conditions? And what the research is showing, which has been so interesting to me that I've learned, is they define the root issue that you need to focus on is attracting and retaining your young talent. So you let that sit with you for a second, you think about it, and how is that going to solve poverty and crime and teenage pregnancy and drugs and prison rates and all this stuff? Well, it's not going to happen tomorrow. But the answer is, and you see this, capital follows talent and talent follows place. So this is the current thinking and current modeling. It's research based. It wasn't this way 30 years ago. When 30 years ago I'm out of college, I went where there's a job. I don't care where I'm going. Where's a job? I need a job. It's different now. We all know what unemployment's like. We're below 3%. Young people are making their decisions based on place. They know full well whether they're working for themselves, small entrepreneur, or a lot of work obviously is remote now. They want to go somewhere they want to live with an authentic sense of place. And they want this life. They want this sort of urban, dense, central life. And they're going to go to those cities, and we just see it, right? First it was Atlanta, kind of keeping it in the southeast.
Right, yeah.
And you've watched Nashville, and you've watched Austin, and you've watched, Asheville or Charleston. People are flocking to these cities, and you think it's mostly about, the job opportunities. Actually not. It's about place. And place has created the job opportunities because the people who wanted to start businesses wanted to go to those towns. So it's like, chicken or the egg, which happened first.
Right.
Yeah.
But you have to attract and retain your talent, because if you don't, when your talent leaves, so think about it, that's, the town I grew up in, you left. When you got out of high school, you left.
Yeah.
Just because you need a job and you wanted to go somewhere else. And that's what happened to all these towns. It happened to Pensacola, it happened to all of them. You went to the bigger cities because you needed a job. And so that's what you're having to deal with. If you lose your talent, if your people when they're 18, 19, 20, 21 are all getting out of your city, what's going to happen in 20 years? I mean, nobody.
Yeah.
Your older people, your talent, they're going to retire, leave the earth, whatever, and there's not going to be anybody there to do anything.
Right.
And that is why it's so critical. So back to that Capital Falls town, Town Falls place. So there needs intense, serious investment and focus on making your place, wherever it is, incredible, right? To attract and retain that talent. And so that's been our focus is what do we need to do so that when you turn 18, there's opportunities here, you want to live here, you want to stay here. So that's what we're focused on.
Nice. Well, we know your time as the president of Suter Properties is very valuable. So before we let you run off, what's one big thing that you see happening in Atlanta, Miami, New York, a big hub that you would like to see in Pensacola? Downtown Pensacola.
Yeah. Well, back to this idea of attracting and retaining talent, I think, again, it's sort of our next big thing. What we're realizing is that you, in addition to being a great place, you better be a great place for entrepreneurs, for young talent to start their own businesses and grow their own small businesses. So you see this in bigger cities all over the place. So a lot of them are just focused on co-work space. Like we need some great co-work space. That is true. That is one of the inputs that's needed because young people, they can't afford some big office rent. They don't want to work out of their house. They want to go somewhere community with other people, but they only want to spend $300-400 a month or whatever it is in a space. That's great. It's way more than that. For entrepreneurs to want to come to your town and start a business and grow a business, there's other legs of the stool that they need, least of which is a space.
Yeah.
Right.
Access to capital. They absolutely need to know that they have a place where there is a group of investors that wants to invest in small business and startups. That's not even the most important. The most important, and a ton of research shows this, is a community of mentors, leadership and mentors and training. So that they have people that you tell me when you're starting out, you don't know what you don't know.
Right.
You don't even know the questions to ask. You have a great idea, you have a passion, but you don't know where to go next with it. So we are in the process of starting a new venture downtown called The Spring.
Yep.
DC Reeves is working on that. You
Yeah.
should have him on your show to talk about that.
We already have.
We already did.
Okay.
Yeah.
We've talked a little bit about this.
Super cool initiative that is going to be a game changer.
Yeah.
For Pensacola in terms of bringing in this mentorship and this training and this accelerator.
Yeah.
All designed around making this a place where a young person says, not only do I not want to leave here, if I grew up here, I want to come there from another city, and because that's where things are happening. That's where the resources are, the capital is, the talent is, and the help to grow my business. So that we're super excited about.
And that was our mission with starting this podcast.
Yeah, absolutely.
Cool.
Yeah.
One more, as very few people know. Yes, President Suter Properties is very busy with that, but between that and your workouts, you don't have much time for personal time. What are you consuming?
"Quote unquote" machine.
Yeah.
Old machine.
Yeah. What are you consuming? What are some go-to books, audiobooks, podcasts, anything like that?
Yeah, it's funny. I was just in a meeting with a mentorship group the other day, and they were all talking about recent books they've read, and I'm realizing this is a shortfall of mine, because they were all bringing up some classic books in leadership and management that I just never read, and I was like shrinking in my seat because all these people were like, we're so well read, and I'm like, so I just picked up Jonathan Livingston's Seagull, which apparently everyone on the planet's read but me. I just finished a book, which is fantastic. It's by a guy named Bert Thornton. He lives here in town. He's Bert's Chili from Waffle House. He wrote a book called Find an Old Gorilla, which is about finding a good mentor, finding someone that has already been in the jungle and been through the path.
Skin in the game.
Yeah, which is fantastic. Then I've been listening to some triathlon podcasts, but that probably would be boring to other people.
So that was Bert Thornton. It was
Find Old Gorilla.
Okay, that was the first time that one's
I
been
need to pick
mentioned.
it. Yeah, I need to pick that one up.
Awesome.
Sweet.
Again, thank you again so much for your time.
Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Thank you guys. Love what you're doing. Keep it up.